Well, hello, YouTubers, and welcome to another episode of Our Haunted Travels. I am your host, Sean Donnelly.
And I'm your co-host, Mary Ann Donnelly.
Today we are talking about the Lincoln home in Springfield, Illinois.
Welcome to another episode of Our Haunted Travels with your hosts, Sean and Mary Ann Donnelly.
Okay, so Abraham Lincoln's home in Springfield, Illinois. This is
only home that he ever owned.
That's right, the only home that he ever owned. This is Panic D number 1974. It is located at 426 South 7th Street in Springfield, Illinois. And we visited this location in November of 2017.
Yes.
Actually, when we started updating this channel, this was one of the locations that we actually visited. That trip.
That trip, but I think it was
Trip.
like the day after you started redoing this. It was the day after we visited the Lincoln home.
Yes, it was. Because we did the Lincoln
Lincoln Tomb.
That video is out there, and you didn't like that format of that.
No, I hated it.
Was it the Lincoln Tomb? Yeah, we
Yes,
sat there,
yes,
right?
it was.
So we kind of changed things up a little bit.
Yeah.
Getting better. Hey, leave us a comment. If you like the format of these, let me know. If you don't, give me some tips. I'm winging it, folks. Anyway, so we already said this is the only home that Lincoln home they owned. They lived in Springfield, Illinois, where he was a attorney. Whew, can't talk today. But we have a little treat for you on this one. Actually, when we went on tour there, we videotaped the tour guide. So for the history,
listen to the tour guide.
Listen to the tour guide. We'll be right back, and we'll talk about some of the paranormal and some of our experience. And we asked a question of the tour guide, and we'll share that with you too. So stay tuned. Watch this video.
Start with the very quick pop quiz about Abraham Lincoln. What state was Abraham Lincoln born in? Kentucky. Very good. What kind of house?
Log cabin.
Log cabin. Does this look like a log cabin? Are we in Kentucky?
No.
No, that's because here in Springfield, Illinois, we focus on the adult Abraham Lincoln. It was here in Springfield, Illinois, Abraham Lincoln was a husband, a father, a lawyer, a legislator, and president-elect of the United States. So those are the topics that we're going to focus on. However, if you have questions about Abraham Lincoln's, other aspects of Abraham Lincoln's life, please don't be afraid to ask. Abraham Lincoln purchased this home in 1844 for his wife Mary and 9-month-old son Robert. When the Lincolns first purchased this house, it was only a story and a half. If you're not sure what I mean by a half story, we just came from one. Also, so when Abraham Lincoln, as he was growing more successful and as his family was growing, house grew with them. The whole second story was completed by 1856. The Lincolns lived here for 17 years, 1844 to February of 1861. And it was in this home Abraham Lincoln was a proud husband and father. It was also in this home Abraham Lincoln was president-elect of the United States. Today we are going to take a walk. We're going to take a walk back in time to the year 1860 and talk about what it was like to walk in Abraham Lincoln's footsteps in the final few months he lived in this house with his family. I'm just going to kind of make my way. Thank you. Alrighty. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the only home Abraham Lincoln ever owned. The first room I brought, you do want to make sure we can all fit in. And by the way, these, not historic whatsoever. You can lean against these if you need to. The first room I brought you to is called the formal parlor. This is the fanciest room in the entire home. This is the room where Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln would greet their visitors, and where Mrs. Lincoln would make sure the family's nicest furnishings would be put on display. The furniture you see here with the black fabric on it all belonged to Abraham Lincoln. with the exception of the front rocker right here. And the doors in this room are all original. This room is going to hold the majority of the original furnishings. The next few rooms, it's only going to be like 2 or 3 objects per room. But don't worry, I always point out the originals. Abraham Lincoln won the election in November of 1860, but he will be remaining here as President-elect Lincoln. Keep in mind, the original inauguration day was in March, not in January like it is today. So Abraham Lincoln is a few more months here as President-elect. And already he has a lot on his plate. There are states threatening secession, and there are also states who just are not happy with Abraham Lincoln. In the North, you may have been anti-slavery, but that doesn't mean that you were pro-equal rights. Abraham Lincoln said all of his political ideas came down to one statement, a statement from the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. And believe it or not, that statement made people nervous. In the South, they are definitely not happy with Abraham Lincoln. The South understands that with an election of an anti-slavery president, this is the beginning of the end of slavery. Now, in this room, Abraham Lincoln is meeting with people. In fact, there was a diplomat sent from Mexico that was brought here to the Lincoln home. Abraham Lincoln welcomed him, but Abraham Lincoln told him the same thing he was telling everybody else. Right now, he could not make any official decisions, but he will keep anything in his mind, though, when it comes to any future promises. So, but I think it's kind of cool that Abraham Lincoln was ready to meet a foreign diplomat here in the Lincoln home. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln did have one rule. Boys, toys, and pets, not allowed in this room. So in order to talk more about the Lincoln boys, we're going to move to another side of the house. And I'm going to cut this way. Right. You're good. Yeah. Very well. You're fine. Yeah. You can see me. Yeah. Alrighty, if the last person could give me a wave.
You got a wave.
Thank you. Okie dokie, we are now in the Lincoln family sitting room. This is a room for the Lincoln family to talk, relax, have fun, and play games. Today we might call this room the family room. The Lincolns had 4 boys, Robert, Eddie, Willie, and Tad. In 1860, we tend to focus a little bit more on 17-year-old Robert, 10-year-old Willie, and 7-year-old Tad. The reason why is because Edward, their second son, had already passed away by this point. Abraham Lincoln wanted to give his family opportunities he never had. One of the ways he did that was to give Robert the education he never had. Abraham Lincoln only had 1 year of formal education. That's it. Even for him to obtain his law license, he didn't go to law school. He had to self-study and then go in front of the Illinois Supreme Court. They were the ones who administered his bar exam in a very loose kind of terminology. Now, Abraham Lincoln wanted to make sure Robert received a good education. Robert was sent to a boarding school in 1859, Phillips Exeter in New Hampshire, and then Robert was accepted to Harvard University. So Abraham Lincoln was very proud of his son. Abraham Lincoln also made sure his 2 little boys got toys. If you look over to the left, you're going to see one of those toys that Abraham Lincoln purchased. That brown box right there, that is called a stereoscope. That is the original stereoscope Abraham Lincoln purchased for his children. How it worked was Abraham Lincoln put a picture in, told the boys to look through the eye devices, and the pictures would appear as if they were in 3D. That's a high-tech toy for Abraham Lincoln and his family. Mrs. Lincoln, by the way, was over to our right. That little sewing table right there, that did belong to Mary Lincoln. As mother of the house, she is in charge of all the domestic activities. Now, Mrs. Lincoln grew up in a very different environment than her husband. She was born in the aristocracy of Lexington, Kentucky. She had 12 years of formal education, and she spoke fluent French. Abraham Lincoln loved the fact that he had a partner who was politically aware and intelligent. Mrs. Lincoln was an unofficial advisor to her husband for many years. Now, we are going to be heading upstairs, but it's hard to imagine Abraham Lincoln getting a lot of sleep right now as president-elect. In this room, he's distracted by his family. But more and more, Abraham Lincoln is hearing that most of the country is dissatisfied with him, and he hasn't even taken political office yet. We are now going to be heading upstairs. When we do, please use the banister, not just for safety reasons. This banister is original. You are going to be touching something Abraham Lincoln touched. As we like to say, it's like you're shaking hands with Abraham Lincoln. At the top of the stairs to the left, you will notice a room primarily in green. That's the guest bedroom. Go ahead and take a quick look in there, and then I'm going to meet you in the master. And it's also in the master I'll have more of an opportunity to answer any questions. All right, follow me, please. And everybody got to shake hands with Abraham Lincoln, yes? Yes. Yes. Yeah, that was the guest bedroom over there, and you guys got a chance to see the guest bedroom, yes? Excellent. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the master bedroom of Abraham and Mary Lincoln. I do want to point out the original objects in this room: the wardrobe, the chest of drawers, the desk, and the shaving mirror all belonged to Abraham Lincoln. Also, the wallpaper in this room, this is the only wallpaper in the entire house that is an exact replica of what Mrs. Lincoln picked out. The rest of the wallpaper and the rest of the carpeting, they're just reproductions of period-appropriate designs. So all replicas are reproductions, but not all reproductions are replicas. Make sense? Yes. Excellent. In 1860, as we mentioned, Abraham Lincoln is president-elect. 1 month after Abraham Lincoln won the election, South Carolina became the first state to secede from the Union on December 20th, 1860. Abraham Lincoln has not even left Springfield, Illinois yet, and already there is secession and talk of war. Abraham Lincoln has no legal powers whatsoever at this time, which is why it was very strategic for the South to start secession when they did. Abraham Lincoln wrote a letter to Alexander Stephens, the Vice President of the Confederacy. In the letter, Abraham Lincoln wrote, "You believe slavery is right and ought to be extended. We believe slavery is wrong and ought to be restricted. There lies the rub, as that is the only substantial difference between us." By the time Abraham Lincoln was sworn in as our 16th president, 7 of the 11 Confederate states had already left the Union. So when we imagine a president-elect in this room, it's easy to imagine one staying up very late at night. Now, before we move forward, I do want to open up this opportunity for any questions you may have so far. Okay, excellent. No, it's all good. Now, Mr. Lincoln is spending a lot of late nights in this room. Mrs. Lincoln understands that Abraham Lincoln at this time probably needs some privacy. Stay up, read, write letters, so she allows her husband to stay in here. Mrs. Lincoln goes in here to get some sleep. But sometimes Mrs. Lincoln didn't get a good night's sleep either, because the original bed in this room was a trundle bed and was meant for Willie and Tad Lincoln. But good news for Mrs. Lincoln, though. Robert leaves the house for Harvard University, and Willie and Tad get a big boy room. Now, Robert does come back to the home in time for the family to make the journey from Springfield to Washington, D.C., but Willie and Tad are not going to give up the new big boy room that we're going to go see. They make Robert stay in the guest bedroom. So sometimes that room is also referred to as Robert Todd Lincoln's bedroom. So we are going to move forward. We're going to walk through Mrs. Lincoln's room. We're going to meet in the hallway. When we're in the hallway, feel free to look in the bedrooms, but don't go down the stairs just yet. Okay? You are now in charge. Make sure nobody goes down the stairs. You are an optimist? Yes. Excuse me, I'm actually going to go this way. Just want to direct traffic.
All right, so that was kind of cool. We actually brought people on the tour with us. So if you haven't been there, that's kind of neat. That's what they do when you go on tour. Here's another interesting little tidbit. That tour doesn't cost anything. It's absolutely free.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely free. The place is ran by the National
Park
Service,
Service,
who looks at us paranormal people with goofy, creepy eyes. They don't believe in the paranormal. I guess it depends on which ones you talk to, but most of them are just hardcore historians. But yeah, most of the times you talk to them, they're like, "Oh, you're one of those."
Yeah, but it is a totally free tour. However, you do have to go to the visitor center to get tickets to the tour,
Right.
And they are timed tours. So,
Why is it free? Do you remember?
well,
You
Todd
don't
or
remember.
Tad? Todd. Robert Todd Lincoln.
Robert Lincoln. Yeah.
He said that he wanted to give the house to the people, basically, but
Right.
no
sold it
one
to
could
the
ever
state.
no one could ever make money off of
He
it.
sold it to the state for $1 with the condition that nobody would ever be charged to see his father's home.
Yes.
As long as they kept it that way, boom.
Right.
And the state of Illinois honored that, and they made it a visitor center, a landmark people could come to until the state couldn't afford to run it, and the National Park Service took it over.
Right, and
now they
they've
own
been
the whole block.
they've been purchasing all of the homes in the area around it, and so they have the Lincoln's neighborhood, and you can
Right.
walk through the streets as if you were walking
And I
with,
think
with Abraham.
the tour might have mentioned this, but we'll say it again. Sorry if you're going to unclick, because I haven't watched that in a while, but they did mention that. So the Lincolns, they lived there. They loved living there in Springfield, and then of course he became president-elect there.
Right.
And they left there and went to Washington. So so none of them actually lived in that house again after they left. And that was one of the questions that we asked the tour guide is, well, if they owned it, well, when they left, what they did is they rented the house out.
Right.
And it became a rental property, but they still owned it. And a lot of their furniture and stuff was still in the home. But when he passed away and the funeral train came into Springfield and stuff, they kind of made a spectacle of the house. They did decorate the house and funeral, and they brought him in front of the house and things like that. And Robert didn't like that, so that's why he had that condition. Mary Todd never moved back into the home, and that's the question that I asked the tour guide: is why? And this kind of makes sense, you know. This is not a chauvinist thing, but this is how it was back then. The house didn't go to her; it went to Robert. And Robert and Mary weren't kind of like getting along at the time because she was having mental issues. You know, well, we all know. Oh yeah, Mary Todd, she went nuts. Well, she was having a hard time. or she had children that passed. Her husband just passed. She was right next to him when he passed. You can imagine what she was going through, and it just. So when she actually moved back to Springfield, instead of going to that house, she moved in with her sister.
Yes.
And yeah, so that was kind of sad because she really liked living there, and so did Abraham Lincoln. So let's talk a little bit about the paranormal. Of course, the National Guards, they don't want to talk about it, so we couldn't question
Park
anybody.
Service.
Yeah, not National Guards, National Park Service. National Guard, yeah. No, National Park Service. They don't want to talk about it, so we couldn't interview anybody. But there are reports of people seeing a tall, skinny gentleman and a little boy in and around that house, which could have been Abraham Lincoln and I forget the one that passed away. Which one passed away? Willie. Yeah, but they've been seen in other places, including the White House and things like that, which kind of makes sense because it was around the same time period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Willie and President Lincoln did come back and pass in front of the house, and they're both buried there in Springfield. So those are the claims. I haven't found anybody who've done any research. We did get one EVP,
We did.
Which I will share with you. But while we were on the tour, you probably heard it and didn't know you heard it, but I'm going to cut it out and play it for you right now, and then there'll be a separate sub video that explains it. But it's a giggle, and it was in the room when they were talking about the
children playing with the stereoscope.
Yes.
Which it was actually Lincoln's own possession. It was Abraham Lincoln's
Yes,
stereoscope.
that was the original.
That was really cool.
Stereoscope. So, if I don't know if I'm going to play it right now or if I'll link to it.
Decisions.
Yeah, decisions. I'll link to it. So here will be a link. We'll link to that video. It's a giggle. So.
Okay. And by the way, there were no children on our tour.
No, it's a child giggling. No children on our tour.
Right.
So, do you have anything else you'd like to add about this location?
I just like the fact that they went through the privies and things like that, and they pulled out things, and they're actually
I'm glad you brought that up.
They're actually in the visitor center, where you can see all kinds
of. It was in the house
of
next door too, where we met.
Yes, but there's all kind. The ones from Lincoln House are actually in the visitor center. The ones next door are from some of the other houses on the block.
Well, where were the inkwells?
I think that was all at the visitor center, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought it was in the Adams house, but
maybe
but
there was some.
They did find inkwells that were actually used by Abraham Lincoln. How cool would that be to own one of those? And guess where they found them? In the toilet, folks.
Yep,
in the privy. That's where people threw their garbage. So that's why you hear a lot of archaeologists. Thank you. Those digs where they go and they dig up the privies because that's where people throw their garbage.
Right. So there's different shells of different oysters and things like that. There's broken pieces of toys and things like that from the boys, and they're all on display for everybody to see. Yeah. So I think those things are really cool because you get to see those are their things.
Artifacts. They might be broken or used or whatever because they were garbage, but they actually did belong to them.
Yeah,
very cool. I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about that. But yeah, great. Yeah. So if you've been to the
I have one more. I have one more. One more.
Go ahead.
Are you going to show them pictures, or did they have pictures on the one we did before? Are you going to give them more pictures? I don't know. All I know is the kitchen.
Yes.
Is actually bigger than the entire house that Lincoln actually was born into.
Yes.
So I thought that was really cool.
We'll show a picture of the kitchen right now, in case I didn't. So yeah, this is actually bigger than the entire house
that Lincoln was born into.
Abraham Lincoln was born in. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
It's amazing. So it was a big for him to own that house and buy that house. And he actually, when he bought it from the minister that married them. They added on to it. So the second floor he paid to add on, and he bought additional property. So that's a pretty good achievement for somebody who was a poor boy from backwoods. So American dream.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's the room upstairs. I think it's on the second floor. It's down the hall from their bedroom. Is where the maid or whatever
Yeah, she was the
She
nanny.
was the nanny, but she was hired help.
She was a hired nanny. They
she
did
was,
not have slaves.
right.
They had hired
He
help.
hired the help.
Yeah.
Yeah, he paid all of his help. So
Yeah.
okay.
Lived on the same floor with them, just down the hallway.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting place. Highly recommended. If you've been there, please leave it in the comments. If you were, kind of like us and snuck a recorder and never caught anything, let us know that too. Yeah.
All right.
All right. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Hit the little subscribe button. Make sure you hit the bell for more videos from Panic Deep Videos. If you like this, give us a thumbs up. But until next time,
Thanks for watching.
and happy hunting.
If you like this video and like to see more in the future, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and give us a like below. Also, if you have any comments or suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comment section. Thanks for watching this episode of Our Haunted Travels.